When we think of the future, we think of flying cars, hoverboards, and space colonization. But how many of us plan to actually be alive by the time it's possible to take a quick taxi to Mars? Well, some people have gone to great lengths to make sure they'll be there. Removing your brain and getting it a deep freezer certainly isn't for everyone, but about 250 people have done this in the US alone. Although if it turns out they're right and it is possible to get a second chance at life, they'll be having a last laugh. Not that we'll be around to hear it. Here are 10 people who cryogenically preserved their bodies. To guarantee your future is full of the best videos possible, go ahead and freeze your finger over the subscribe button. Okay, now press it. See, thanks to the hub, you didn't even have to wait hundreds of years. Hal Finney. If you've ever played Adventures of Tron, Armor Ambush, or Astroblast, you have Hal Finney to thank. He worked for the PTP Corporation, which makes the games. He was also the first user of Bitcoin. Since he was always on the cutting edge of technology, perhaps it makes sense he was interested in cryogenics. His body was frozen after his death of imagophobic lateral sclerosis in 2014. If he manages to come back, we may finally have the answer to one of life's greatest questions. What happens to your Bitcoin when you die? Some people preserve their bodies by eating healthy and exercising. Others believe the best way is by popping it in a freezer for a few hundred years. Who's to say which way is better? Although let's just say you're more likely to catch us heading to the freezer than the gym. Mathurin Neverett Pond, another life lost to brain cancer. But this time it was a life barely starter. Mathurin Neverett Pond was just 2 years old when she passed away. Her parents are both medical engineers and opted to freeze their daughter in hopes that she could be revived when a cure is found. They are confident that a cure will be found. It's just a question of when. Although the science behind cryogenics may never prove successful, her memory and tragedy may help other children. Since her death, her parents have been donating large sums of money to cancer research. Thomas Donaldson. How out there do your ideas have to be in order for proponents of cryogenics to think you're crazy? Meet accomplished mathematician Thomas Donaldson. We all know that our brains store all of our personality and memories, but Donaldson was convinced that even if we lost the rest of our bodies, as long as our brains remained intact, reanimation would still be possible. Nowadays, this is known as the Walking Dead theory. Ironically, Donaldson was diagnosed with a brain tumor and fought for the right to be killed and preserve himself before the tumor could take his brain. He lost the case and was forced to wait to be frozen until he was actually dead. John Henry Williams. Fun fact. According to an online quiz, if John Henry Williams was a movie character, he would be Norman Bates. We mentioned in our last entry that the children of Ted Williams opted to have him frozen against his wishes. Well, his son John Henry didn't want to take any chances that he might end up apart from his father. After failing at a baseball career and his ISP business, John Henry Williams decided maybe he'd do better on his second life. His remains were frozen along with his father's after his death in 2004 of acute myelogenous leukemia. Ted Williams. Although Ted Williams is best known for his baseball career, his legacy may just end up being a bit more immortal than most. From the locker room to the deep freeze locker, Williams is regarded as one of the best baseball players in history. His career on the Boston Red Sox is filled with awards, culminating in his induction into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1966. Although his sports-related accomplishments are more well-known, he apparently earned all of those World's Best Dad mud. Williams wanted to be cremated after his death. However, his kids couldn't bear to say goodbye and chose to have his remains frozen instead. Dora Kent. As the mother of Saul Kent, a board member of the Alcor Life Extension Foundation, it seemed only natural that Dora Kent would be preserved in a very unnatural method. But for some reason, the cops found the fact that the Alcor Foundation removed her head after her alleged death by pneumonia suspicious. Maybe they could have at least had a doctor look her over first. Authorities suspected that the actual cause of her death was drug-induced homicide and filed charges against Saul and the foundation. But the Alcor Foundation came out ahead, as the charges were dropped and they retained Dora's frozen body and decapitated head. FM 2030. Every parent thinks that their child is going to grow up to be special. The parents of Feridun M. Estuary were right about that. Well, special is one way to describe a man who would grow up to legally change his name to FM 2030. Among his many bizarre, yet strongly held views, was the belief that 2030 would be a magical time in which people would be ageless and immortal. He also believed the pancreas was, quote, a stupid, dumb, wretched organ. Although he may have been a bit biased about that since he died of pancreatic cancer. His body has been cryogenically frozen, but we think he might be waiting past 2030. Sorry, FM 2030. We are so way behind on the hoverboard thing, and it's a bigger priority. Richard Flair Jones. Best known for his work on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, The Bob Newhart Show, and The Facts of Life, Richard Clare Jones is less well known for events that occurred after his death. A longtime supporter of cryogenics, Jones died of AIDS at age 57 in 1988. While Jones had made his wishes clear, the hospital in which he died wasn't ready to let him go without a fight. They thought the process of cryogenics was barbaric and fought an intense legal battle to prevent his remains from being frozen. No amount of defibrillation could stop their case from flatlining, and Jones got his last wish. J.S. As Whitney Houston once said, the children are our future. But the future doesn't come fast enough for some children. A 14-year-old girl, identified only as JS, had her body cryogenically frozen after she passed away from cancer. She believed that in the future, a cure would be found, and being frozen was her only chance at being cured. Although her mother was in support of the plan, her father wasn't, and the case was a landmark one when it went to trial. The judge ruled in favor of the teenager and her mother, because saying no to a little girl with cancer generally isn't a good career move. Dr. James Bedford. There are a lot of memorable firsts. First person to walk on the moon, or the first person to invent vaccines. For some reason, the first man to have his corpse frozen usually doesn't get on those lists. Although it seems futuristic, the first person to be frozen, albeit crudely, was Dr. James Bedford in 1967. Never a man to pass up a bargain, he leapt at the chance to have his body frozen by the Life Extension Society for free. While other seniors were satisfied with getting a discount for the movies, 73-year-old Bedford had his eyes on the much bigger prize, immortality. His body was frozen just a few hours after his death, using dimethyl sulfoxide, a substance no longer used in cryogenics. Although he remains frozen, due to the rudimentary methods used, it's unlikely his brain is intact. This just goes to show, it doesn't matter what your body is like if you don't have the brains to back it up. Just in case we only get this one shot at Earth, learn as much as you can about the weird, wild, and wonderful planet we live on by watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a moment of it. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.